In the vast expanse of the galaxy where countless species have risen and fallen, one truth echoes through the cosmic void: survival belongs to the strongest, the smartest, the most advanced. Entire civilizations measure their worth by technological superiority and genetic perfection. The weak are discarded, the damaged are abandoned, and mercy is seen as a fatal flaw that leads to extinction. But what happens when a species emerges that doesn't follow these universal laws? What happens when beings appear who see potential where others see worthlessness, who extend helping hands instead of turning away, who choose compassion over conquest? The galaxy is about to learn that sometimes the most primitive species can teach the most advanced civilizations what it truly means to be alive. This is the story of how one human mechanic's simple act of kindness would shatter everything the galaxy thought it knew about strength, survival, and the power of an unlikely friendship that would change the fate of worlds. The recycling depot on Kepler Station buzzed with the constant hum of machinery, sorting through the galaxy's unwanted debris. Marcus Chen wiped grease from his hands as he surveyed the latest shipment of scrap that had arrived from the inner systems. As the station's head mechanic, he had seen everything from broken starship engines to discarded alien technology that various species had deemed worthless. The morning shift had been routine until now. His team was processing materials from a Zephyrian transport vessel that had been stripped and sold for parts after a cargo mishap. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most technologically advanced species, their sleek ships and precise engineering the envy of countless civilizations. They were also known for their cold efficiency and their belief that anything imperfect should be eliminated. Marcus was examining a damaged navigation computer when he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was faint, almost lost among the mechanical noises of the depot, but unmistakably organic. A weak, pained whimper that spoke of suffering and desperation. Following the sound, Marcus made his way through piles of twisted metal and broken components. The whimpering grew louder as he approached a section where biocontainment units were stacked. These units were typically used for transporting livestock or exotic pets across space, though Marcus had never seen one arrive in the scrap pile before. The sound was coming from inside one of the containers. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he approached the unit. The bio readings on the external display showed critically low life signs. Whatever was inside was dying. He quickly accessed the container's lock mechanism, his fingers flying over the control panel with practiced efficiency. The seal hissed as the container opened, releasing a rush of stale air tinged with the metallic scent of blood. Inside, curled in the corner of the cramped space, was a creature unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. At first glance, it resembled a large cat, but the similarities ended there. The being stood about 4 feet tall even in its weakened state, with a sleek, muscular build covered in fur that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on how the light hit it. Its face was distinctly feline, but with larger, more expressive eyes that held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. Those eyes, a brilliant amber color, looked up at Marcus with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. The creature was badly injured. Deep gashes ran across its left side, and its breathing was labored and uneven. One of its legs appeared to be broken, bent at an unnatural angle. Most disturbing of all was the metal collar around its neck, connected to a small device that Marcus recognized as a neural inhibitor, designed to suppress higher brain functions. Marcus knelt slowly, keeping his movements calm and non-threatening. The creature watched him warily but didn't try to move away. Perhaps it was too weak to flee. Or perhaps some instinct told it that this human meant no harm. "Easy there," Marcus said softly, his voice gentle despite the anger building inside him. Someone had deliberately put this sentient being in that container and left it to die. The neural inhibitor alone was evidence that this wasn't just some exotic pet, but a thinking, feeling individual who had been treated like disposable cargo. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a purr but tinged with pain. Marcus noticed that its eyes tracked his movements with clear intelligence, and when he extended his hand slowly, the being sniffed cautiously before allowing the contact. Marcus carefully began examining the creature's injuries. The wounds were serious but treatable with proper medical attention. The broken leg would need to be set and splintered. Most importantly, that neural inhibitor needed to come off immediately. "What did they do to you?" Marcus murmured as he worked. The device around the creature's neck was locked with Zephyrian security protocols, but Marcus had dealt with their technology before. It took him several minutes to bypass the encryption and release the collar. The moment the inhibitor fell away, the change was dramatic. The creature's eyes became more alert, more focused. It straightened despite its injuries and looked directly at Marcus with an expression of profound gratitude and recognition. To Marcus's amazement, The being began to speak. The words came out as a series of musical tones and chirps, but somehow Marcus found he could understand the meaning behind them, as if the creature was communicating directly with his mind. "Thank you," the voice seemed to say inside his head. "I thought I would die in that place." Marcus rocked back on his heels, stunned. Telepathic communication wasn't unknown in the galaxy, but experiencing it firsthand was overwhelming. The creature's mental voice was warm and distinctly feminine, though he wasn't sure how he knew that. "You're welcome," Marcus replied aloud, unsure if his response would be understood. "What's your name? Who did this to you?" The creature's ears flattened against her head, and waves of sadness and anger flowed through their mental connection. "My name is Lyra. I was, of the Cathara people, but my clan has cast me out. They left me to die because I am broken." "Broken?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean broken?" Lyra struggled to sit up straighter, wincing as her injuries protested. "Among my people, I am considered defective. I cannot change my form as others cannot shift between solid and energy states as is natural for Katara. I am trapped in this single shape, making me useless to my clan." Marcus felt his anger growing as he pieced together what had happened. The Cathara were shapeshifters, a species he had heard about but never encountered. Apparently, Lyra's inability to transform had made her an outcast in her own society. "That doesn't make you broken," Marcus said firmly. "That makes you unique." The concept seemed to confuse Lyra. Through their mental link, Marcus could sense her trying to process the idea that being different might not automatically mean being worthless. Marcus carefully lifted Lyra from the container, noting that despite her injuries, she was surprisingly light. Her body felt warm and almost seemed to vibrate with an internal energy that reminded him of a cat's purr. "We need to get you to the medical bay," Marcus said. "These injuries need proper treatment." As he carried her through the depot, Marcus's mind was racing. Helping an injured being was one thing, but harboring what might be considered stolen property was another matter entirely. If the Zephyrians had paid for disposal of this cargo, taking her could cause diplomatic problems for the station. But looking down at Lyra's trusting amber eyes, Marcus knew he couldn't abandon her, any more than he could ignore a wounded animal. There had to be more to this story, and he was determined to find out what had really happened. The medical bay on Kepler Station was designed to handle a wide variety of alien physiologies, but Dr. Sarah Kim was still surprised when Marcus arrived carrying what appeared to be a large, injured cat person. "Marcus, what in the universe did you find?" "Dr. Fairs," Kim asked as she quickly cleared an examination table. "Her name is Lyra," Marcus explained as he gently placed the Cathara on the biobed. "She was left to die in the recycling shipment from the Zephyrian transport." Dr. Kim immediately began her examination, her trained hands moving carefully over Lyra's injuries, while medical scanners built up a detailed picture of her physiology. "These wounds are recent, maybe a few hours old at most. And this break in her leg, it's a clean fracture, probably from impact trauma. Can you help her?" Marcus asked, staying close enough that Lyra could maintain their mental connection. He could sense her fear of the unfamiliar medical environment, but also her trust in him. "Absolutely, Dr. Mathis," Kim replied with professional confidence. "Her species has remarkable regenerative capabilities. The wounds will heal cleanly with proper treatment, and the bone will mend stronger than before." "But Marcus, this is going to raise questions. Katara don't usually end up in recycling containers." Marcus had been thinking about that problem since he found Lyra. "I know, but we can't just turn her over to whoever put her there in the first place. She's sentient. She has rights." Dr. Kim paused in her treatment preparations. "She can communicate?" "Telepathically," Marcus confirmed. "She told me her own people cast her out because she can't shapeshift like the rest of her kind."
"That's barbaric, Doctor,"
Kim said, her voice hardening with anger. "Rejecting someone for a genetic variation? We're supposed to be civilized species." As doctor, Kim worked to clean and dress Lyra's wounds. Marcus found himself learning more about Cathara physiology and culture through their mental connection. Lyra's people were ancient. Their civilization built around the concept of unity through transformation. Every Cathara was expected to be able to shift between multiple forms, allowing them to adapt to any environment or situation. Lyra had been born unable to transform, making her what her people considered a throwback to a more primitive evolutionary stage. Rather than accommodate her difference, her clan had decided she was a burden and arranged for her to be disposed of during a trade mission to Zephyrian space. The worst part, Lyra shared through their mental link, is that I was actually good at other things. I could fix their technology, solve problems they couldn't. But because I couldn't change shape, none of that mattered. Marcus felt a surge of recognition. He had spent his own life being underestimated because he worked with his hands instead of his mind, because he chose practical skills over academic achievement. The parallel wasn't lost on him. Intelligence and ability come in many forms, Marcus told her. Your people were fools to waste your talents. Dr. Kim finished setting Lyra's broken leg and sealing the wounds with biomesh that would accelerate healing. She'll need to stay off that leg for a few days, but she should make a full recovery. Her species is remarkably resilient. As Lyra rested under the medical bay's healing lamps, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives. He couldn't send her back to a people who had tried to kill her, and he wouldn't turn her over to authorities who might view her as property rather than a person. Would you like to stay here? Marcus asked Lyra. I mean, on the station. You could work with me in the depot if you want. We always need people who are good with technology. Lyra's amber eyes widened with surprise, and something Marcus recognized as hope. You would do that, even though I'm broken? You're not broken, Marcus said firmly. You're just different. And sometimes different is exactly what the universe needs. The concept of accepting someone for their unique qualities rather than rejecting them for their limitations was so foreign to Lyra's experience that it took several moments for her to process it. When she finally responded, her mental voice was thick with emotion. I would like that very much, she said. I have never had a friend before. Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. Well, you do now. As news of Marcus's discovery spread through the station, reactions were mixed. Some saw it as a humanitarian act worthy of praise, while others worried about the diplomatic implications of harboring what might be considered stolen property. Commander Rebecca Torres, the station's commanding officer, called Marcus to her office within hours of learning about the situation. Marcus, I understand your compassion.
Commander Torres said as she reviewed the initial reports.
But we need to consider the broader implications. The Zephyrians could claim we're interfering with their legitimate business arrangements. Their legitimate business arrangement involved letting a sentient being die in a recycling container, Marcus replied. Last I checked, that qualified as murder in most civilized systems. Commander Torres sighed. She had known Marcus for 5 years and respected his judgment, but this situation was complex. The problem is proving that the Katara was deliberately abandoned rather than accidentally included in the salvage. Without evidence of intent, it becomes a question of property rights. She's not property, Marcus said, his voice growing heated. She's a person with her own thoughts and feelings and rights. I agree with you, Torres said quickly. But legally, the situation is complicated. I'm going to need time to research this and consult with the diplomatic corps. Marcus left the meeting frustrated but not defeated. He knew Commander Torres was a good person who would do the right thing given time, but he also knew that bureaucracy moves slowly while Lyra needed protection now. Over the next few days, as Lyra recovered in the medical bay, Marcus spent every free moment with her. Their mental connection deepened, allowing them to share not just words but emotions and memories. Marcus learned about Kathara culture, their technology, and their history of expansion across multiple star systems. In return, Lyra learned about human society, about the diversity of Earth's many cultures, and the human tendency to celebrate differences rather than eliminate them. The concept fascinated her. Your species thrives on variation, Lyra observed during one of their conversations. You have thousands of different languages, customs, beliefs. How do you maintain unity? We don't, always, Marcus admitted. Humans fight plenty, but our best achievements come when we work together, when we combine different perspectives and skills. Diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. This philosophy was revolutionary to Lyra, who had been raised in a society that valued conformity above all else. The idea that her differences could be seen as assets rather than flaws was slowly transforming her self-perception. As word of the Kathara's presence spread beyond the station, the situation became more complex. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium that had shipped the salvage demanded the return of all materials, claiming that any living beings found among the cargo were their responsibility to deal with according to their own protocols. The Katara government, when contacted, initially denied any knowledge of Lyra's existence. Only when pressed did they acknowledge that a defective individual had been removed from their population for the good of the clan. But they claimed no further responsibility for her fate. Both responses only strengthened Marcus's resolve to protect Lyra. It was clear that neither the Zephyrians nor her own people considered her worthy of basic rights or dignity. Meanwhile, Lyra was proving herself invaluable around the depot. Her understanding of technology, particularly biomechanical systems, was extraordinary. She could diagnose problems that stumped human engineers and suggest solutions that were both elegant and efficient. "She's brilliant," Marcus reported to Commander Torres during one of their regular updates. "In 3 days, she's improved our sorting efficiency by 20% and identified several pieces of technology that we almost scrapped, but turned out to be extremely valuable." Commander Torres nodded thoughtfully. "That's good to know, because I've been getting pressure from both the Zephyrians and the Galactic Council to resolve this situation. Some species are taking it as a precedent about how abandoned individuals should be treated." Marcus felt a chill of worry. What kind of precedent? The kind where other species start questioning whether they can simply discard their unwanted population members in other people's recycling systems, Torres replied. "Apparently, this practice is more common than we realized." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Lyra wasn't just an isolated case of cruelty. She represented a systematic problem across multiple species. The thought of how many other sentient beings might have died alone and forgotten in recycling centers throughout the galaxy made him sick. "We have to do something about this," Marcus said firmly. "I know," Torres replied. "But first, we need to establish legal protection for Lyra. I've been working with our legal department and some contacts in the Galactic Council. There might be a way to grant her citizenship or refugee status, but it's going to take time." Time was something they might not have. Reports were coming in that several Zephyrian warships had changed course toward Kepler Station, ostensibly for routine trade negotiations. The message was clear: return their property or face the consequences. As the tension mounted, Marcus found himself spending even more time with Lyra, both to provide comfort and to learn everything he could about her abilities. What he discovered amazed him. Despite her inability to physically shapeshift, Lyra possessed an intuitive understanding of energy and matter that bordered on the supernatural. She could sense the molecular composition of materials through touch, predict how different substances would react when combined, and even manipulate electromagnetic fields to a limited degree. "My people never understood that my gift was different, not absent," Lyra explained as she demonstrated her ability to interface directly with electronic systems through bioelectric contact. "They only saw what I couldn't do, never what I could." Marcus watched in fascination as Lyra placed her hand on a damaged communications array and somehow restored it to full function without tools or replacement parts. "How is that possible?" he asked. "I can feel the energy patterns, see where they're disrupted," Lyra replied. "It's like, imagine if you could see sound waves and smooth out the rough places. That's what this feels like to me." Marcus realized that Lyra's abilities were not only unique but potentially revolutionary. Her understanding of energy manipulation could advance human technology by decades, possibly centuries. But more importantly, she was becoming the friend he had never known he needed. As the Zephyrian ships drew closer to the station, Marcus made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He would not allow Lyra to be taken back to a life of persecution and abandonment, no matter what the cost. The Zephyrian fleet arrived at Kepler Station with the cold precision that characterized everything their species did. 3 massive warships took position around the station, their weapons powered down but clearly visible. The message was unmistakable: comply or face the consequences. Marcus stood in the observation deck watching the ships through the reinforced transparent aluminum. Lyra beside him. Her amber eyes tracked the sleek vessels with a mixture of fear and determination. "They're beautiful ships," Lyra said. Through their mental connection, her thoughts tinged with sadness. "The Zephyrians create such wonderful things, but they have no room in their hearts for anything they consider imperfect." Marcus placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, feeling the slight vibration that always accompanied her emotional responses. Over the past week, he had learned to read these subtle signs as clearly as facial expressions. "We're not giving up," Marcus said firmly. "Commander Torres is working on a legal solution, and I have some ideas of my own." Before Lyra could respond, the station's communication system crackled to life. The voice that emerged was cold and mechanically precise, translated from Zephyrian through the universal language matrix. "Kepler Station Command, this is Fleet Commander Zix of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. We understand you are harboring property that belongs to us. We request immediate return of all salvage materials, including any biological specimens found among our cargo." Commander Torres's voice responded from the command center. "Fleet Commander Zix, we acknowledge your presence. However, the individual you're referring to is a sentient being who has requested asylum. We cannot simply hand over a person as if they were cargo." The creature in question is defective biological material that was properly disposed of according to our contract with its previous owners. It has no legal standing in this matter. Marcus felt Lyra's whole body tense at being called defective biological material. Through their connection, he could sense her struggle with old feelings of worthlessness that the Zephyrian's words had triggered. "You are not defective," Marcus said firmly, both aloud and through their mental link. "You're extraordinary. Don't let their ignorance make you doubt that." The diplomatic exchange continued for several hours, with neither side budging from their position. The Zephyrians maintained that Lyra was property to be disposed of, while Torres insisted on her rights as a sentient being. Meanwhile, Marcus was implementing a plan he had been developing since the ships first appeared. Working with his engineering team, Marcus had spent the last 2 days modifying the station's systems with Lyra's help. Her unique abilities to interface directly with technology had allowed them to make improvements that should have taken weeks to implement. "Are you sure this will work?" asked Alina Rodriguez, Marcus's deputy chief engineer, as they made final adjustments to the station's power grid. "It has to work," Marcus replied, checking the readings on his tablet. "Lyra's energy manipulation abilities are unlike anything the Zephyrians have encountered. If we can demonstrate her value as an individual rather than an object, maybe we can change their perspective." Lyra herself was nervous about the plan, which required her to interface directly with the station's main computer core. "What if I damage something? What if my abilities aren't as controlled as we think?" "You won't damage anything," Marcus assured her. "I've seen what you can do. You have more precise control over energy systems than any AI I've ever worked with." The plan was risky, but Marcus believed it was their best chance to prove that Lyra was not just sentient, but valuable beyond anything the Zephyrians could imagine. If successful, it would demonstrate capabilities that could benefit the entire galactic community. As evening approached on the station's artificial day cycle, Commander Torres called an emergency meeting. Present were Marcus, Dr. Preva, Kim, the senior engineering staff, and several diplomatic advisors who had arrived via emergency transport. "The situation is deteriorating," Torres announced without preamble. "The Zephyrians have given us an ultimatum. Return their property within 12 hours or face economic sanctions that could cripple this station. They've also threatened to involve the Galactic Trade Commission." One of the diplomatic advisors, a stern woman named Ambassador Walsh, spoke up. "Commander, we need to consider the broader implications. Kepler Station depends on trade relationships with dozens of species. If the Zephyrians convince others that we're interfering with legitimate business practices, it could destroy us economically." Marcus felt his anger rising. "So we're supposed to sacrifice one innocent person to protect our trade relationships?" "It's not that simple," Walsh replied. "We have to think about the thousands of people who live and work on this station. Their livelihoods depend on maintaining good relationships with our trading partners. And what about the thousands of other defective individuals who might be murdered if we establish the precedent that disposing of sentient beings is acceptable business practice?" Marcus shot back. The room fell silent as the weight of that argument settled on everyone present. "Doctor," Kim finally broke the silence. "Marcus is right. We've done some research over the past few days, and this practice is far more widespread than anyone realized. At least 17 species routinely dispose of individuals they consider genetically or socially unfit. If we don't take a stand here, we're enabling a form of genocide." Commander Torres rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of an impossible decision.
What are options?
"Legal, military, diplomatic, anything. The legal route will take months or years," Ambassador Walsh admitted. "Galactic law is complex, and the Zephyrians have significant influence in the courts. Military action is out of the question," added Security Chief Johnson. "We're a civilian station with minimal defenses. Those 3 warships could destroy us in minutes if they chose to." Marcus stood up, drawing all eyes to him. "There is another option. Let me show them what they're really trying to destroy." Over the next hour, Marcus explained his plan. It was audacious, risky, and completely unprecedented, but it offered a chance to change the entire dynamic of the confrontation. The plan centered on Lyra's unique abilities and their potential applications. Working with the station's computer systems, she could demonstrate technological capabilities that would make her valuable not just to humans, but to any species interested in advancing their technology. "If we can prove that Lyra represents a new form of technological evolution," Marcus argued, "the Zephyrians might reconsider their position. They value efficiency and advancement above all else." Commander Torres was skeptical. "And if they decide her abilities make her too dangerous to live? Then we cross that bridge when we come to it," Marcus replied. "But right now, she's going to die anyway if we don't try something." Lyra herself had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. I want to try. If there's a chance my abilities could help other people like me, I have to take that risk. After much debate, Torres approved the plan. They would request a formal audience with the Zephyrian commander and demonstrate Lyra's capabilities. It was a desperate gamble, but it was better than simply surrendering. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning in the station's main conference chamber. The Zephyrians agreed to send a representative, though they made it clear this was merely a formality before they took more direct action. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He found himself in the depot, working on a damaged power converter that didn't really need his attention. Lyra found him there, moving carefully on her still-healing leg. "You're worried about tomorrow," she observed, settling down beside his workbench. "Terrified is more accurate," Marcus admitted. "If this doesn't work, I don't know what else we can do." Lyra was quiet for a moment, then shared something through their mental connection that surprised him. It was a memory from her childhood of being the only Cathara child who couldn't join in the traditional shape-shifting games. Instead of playing with the others, she had spent her time learning to interface with the ancient technology that powered their cities. "I used to think I was broken because I was different," Lyra said. "But you taught me that different can be valuable. Tomorrow, I want to show them that what they see as a flaw might actually be evolution." Marcus felt a surge of pride and affection for his friend. "You're going to change everything, Lyra. I believe that." The morning of the demonstration arrived with tense anticipation throughout the station. The main conference chamber had been modified to accommodate the technical requirements of Lyra's abilities, with direct access to the station's primary computer systems. The Zephyrian representative, Subcommander Keth, was everything Marcus expected. Tall, humanoid, but with silver skin and mechanical enhancements that gave him an almost robotic appearance. His expression remained neutral as introductions were made. "Subcommander," Torres began formally, "we appreciate your willingness to attend this demonstration. We believe you'll find it illuminating." "I am here as a courtesy," Keth replied in his translated mechanical voice. "Nothing you show me will change the fact that you are harboring stolen property." Marcus stepped forward. "What if we could show you that this property represents a technological advancement that could benefit your entire civilization?" Keth's mechanical eyes focused on Marcus with something that might have been curiosity. "Explain." "Lyra possesses abilities that allow her to interface directly with technology in ways that no other known species can achieve. She can manipulate energy patterns, repair systems without tools, and enhance computer processing capabilities beyond their original specifications." "Impossible," Keth stated flatly. "No biological organism can interface with technology at the quantum level required for such manipulations." "Watch and learn," Marcus said, gesturing for Lyra to approach the demonstration setup. What followed was 45 minutes of the most extraordinary technological demonstration in the station's history. Lyra interfaced directly with systems that shouldn't have been compatible with biological organisms. She enhanced the station's computer processing speed by 300% while simultaneously optimizing power consumption. She repaired a damaged navigation computer that 3 different engineering teams had declared irreparable. Most impressively, she demonstrated the ability to create entirely new programs through direct mental interface with the computer systems, crafting solutions to complex problems in real time. Subcommander Keth watched everything with growing intensity, his mechanical features betraying no emotion but his attention completely focused on Lyra's every movement. "The energy manipulation she's demonstrating," Keth said finally, "it should be impossible for any biological entity to achieve that level of precision." "The Cathara rejected her because she couldn't shapeshift," Marcus explained. But what they didn't realize is that her inability to change physical form allowed her consciousness to develop the ability to manipulate pure energy instead. She represents an evolutionary leap forward. Keth approached Lyra directly for the first time. "You are the defective individual that was disposed of." Lyra met his mechanical gaze steadily. "I was considered defective because I am different. But as you can see, different does not mean worthless." "Indeed," Keth replied, and Marcus detected something new in his voice. "This demonstration has been educational." The sub-commander activated a communication device and spoke in rapid Zephyrian to his ship. The conversation lasted several minutes, with increasingly animated exchanges that suggested significant debate among the Zephyrian command structure. Finally, Keth turned back to the assembled humans. "My superiors wish to make you an offer. We will withdraw our claim to the Cathara in exchange for the exclusive right to study and replicate her abilities." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. "Absolutely not. She's not a test subject." "Then you misunderstand," Keth replied. "We propose a research partnership. The Cathara would work with our scientists voluntarily, sharing her knowledge in exchange for resources and protection. She would be granted full citizenship in the Zephyrian Consortium. Lyra looked to Marcus, her amber eyes seeking guidance. Through their mental connection, he could sense her conflicted feelings. The offer represented safety and recognition, but also separation from the first true friend she had ever known. What would this partnership involve? Marcus asked carefully. Keth outlined a proposal that was surprisingly generous. Lyra would be given her own research facility, a team of scientists to work with, and complete freedom to develop her abilities as she saw fit. In return, she would share her knowledge with Zephyrian scientists and help them understand the principles behind her energy manipulation capabilities. It's a good offer, Commander Torres observed. Better than we could have hoped for. But Marcus noticed something the others missed. Despite the generous terms, the proposal still treated Lyra as a unique asset to be managed rather than as an individual with her own desires and goals. What if she doesn't want to work with the Zephyrians? Marcus asked. Sub-Commander Keth seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. Why would she not want access to the most advanced research facilities in the galaxy? Because maybe she has other priorities, Marcus replied, like helping other people who've been rejected by their societies for being different. This concept appeared to be entirely new to Keith. The idea that someone might choose to help others over advancing themselves was clearly outside his understanding. Lyra stepped forward, her decision made. I appreciate your offer, Sub-Commander, but I have to decline. Decline? Keth repeated, as if the word made no sense. I've learned something important during my time here, Lyra continued. There are countless individuals throughout the galaxy who are suffering the way I suffered, rejected by their own people for being different. I want to use my abilities to help them, not just to advance science. Marcus felt a surge of pride and admiration for his friend. She was choosing compassion over personal advancement, exactly the kind of choice that defined what was best about humanity. Keth was clearly struggling to process this decision. You would refuse citizenship, resources, and scientific advancement to remain here? I would choose friendship, purpose, and the chance to make a real difference in people's lives, Lyra replied firmly. The sub-commander was quiet for several long moments, clearly communicating with his superiors again. When he finally spoke, his words surprised everyone in the room. The Zephyrian Consortium formally withdraws all claims to the individual designated Lyra. She is free to remain where she chooses. He paused, then added something that sounded almost like respect. We do not understand your choice, but we acknowledge your right to make it. As the Zephyrian ships departed the following day, Marcus and Lyra stood again on the observation deck, watching the graceful vessels disappear into hyperspace. Do you regret your decision? Marcus asked. Lyra's response came filled with warmth and certainty. Never. I've found something more valuable than all the research facilities in the galaxy. What's that? A home, Lyra replied, and a family that accepts me exactly as I am. Marcus smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of their journey together. Word of Lyra's abilities and her choice to help others was already spreading throughout the galaxy. Soon, they would have visitors, refugees and outcasts, looking for the same kind of acceptance that Lyra had found. It was going to be challenging, dangerous, and absolutely worth it. 6 months after the Zephyrian incident, Kepler Station had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. What had started as a simple recycling depot had become a beacon of hope for the galaxy's unwanted and rejected individuals. Marcus stood in what used to be Storage Bay 7, now converted into a thriving workshop, where dozens of beings worked together on projects that were reshaping interstellar technology. Lyra moved among them, her unique abilities allowing her to coordinate systems and solve problems that would have stumped conventional engineers for years. The diversity of species represented in the workshop was staggering. There was Tor, a Goliathan, whose massive size had made him unsuitable for his people's underground cities. His strength, combined with Lyra's energy manipulation, had led to the development of new construction techniques that could build habitable structures in previously impossible environments. Near him worked Whisper, a Vorthan whose inability to speak in the subsonic frequencies preferred by her species had led to her exile. Her silence had forced her to become extraordinarily observant, and she could spot flaws in complex systems that others missed entirely. In the corner, a young crystalline named Prism worked on optical computing systems. His people had rejected him because his body produced light in the visible spectrum rather than the ultraviolet frequencies they considered proper. That same defect made him invaluable for developing communication systems that could work across multiple species. Each individual had arrived at the station with their own story of rejection and pain. Each had found something they had never experienced before: acceptance and purpose. "The Galactic Council wants to meet with us," Commander Torres announced as she entered the workshop. Officially this time.
Marcus looked up from the quantum resonance chamber he was calibrating with Lyra's help.
"What kind of meeting?" "The kind where they either try to shut us down or officially recognize what we're doing here," Torres replied. Ambassador Walsh thinks it could go either way. Over the past months, word of the Haven Project, as it had come to be known, had spread throughout the galaxy. Refugees arrived daily, some in official transport ships, others hidden in cargo containers, much as Lyra had been. Each brought their own unique abilities and perspectives, contributing to a growing community that was achieving remarkable things. The station's technology had advanced exponentially. Lyra's ability to interface directly with computer systems, combined with the diverse skills of the other refugees, had led to breakthroughs in everything from faster-than-light communication to environmental restoration techniques. But success had brought new challenges. Several major governments were becoming nervous about the implications of the Haven Project. The idea that their defective populations might actually be valuable was threatening to social orders built around conformity and genetic purity. "When is this meeting?" Marcus asked. 3 days, Torres replied. "They're sending a full diplomatic delegation, including representatives from species that have been demanding the return of their property." Lyra approached Marcus, her amber eyes reflecting concern through their mental connection. "They're afraid of what we represent," she said. "Change is always threatening to those who benefit from the current system." Marcus nodded, understanding the deeper implications. The Haven Project wasn't just about helping refugees. It was proving that diversity and acceptance could achieve things that conformity never could. That was a dangerous idea for civilizations built on the premise that genetic or social purity was essential for survival. "We need to be prepared for anything," Marcus said. "They might try to force us to return people to their homeworlds, or they might try to shut down the station entirely." Over the next 3 days, the residents of the Haven Project worked together to prepare for the most important presentation of their lives. They would have one chance to prove that their work was not just valuable but essential for the future of galactic civilization. Lyra coordinated with every refugee on the station, using her unique abilities to create a unified demonstration that would showcase not just individual talents, but the power of collaborative diversity. What they planned was ambitious beyond anything attempted before. When the Galactic Council delegation arrived, they found Kepler Station transformed. The docking bays had been modified into a massive presentation space where the entire Haven Project community had assembled. Representatives from over 30 species were present, including several who had specifically come to reclaim their lost property. "Honored delegates," Commander Torres began formally. "Welcome to Kepler Station and the Haven Project. Today you will witness the potential that emerges when diversity is embraced rather than eliminated." The presentation that followed lasted 4 hours and fundamentally changed galactic politics forever. It began with Lyra demonstrating her individual abilities, but quickly evolved into something far more impressive. Working in coordination with other refugees, she showed how their combined skills could solve problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries. Tor's strength, guided by Lyra's energy manipulation and Whisper's observational skills, constructed a new type of space habitat in real time. The structure was stronger, more efficient, and more adaptable than anything in the current galactic architectural database. Prism worked with a melodic whose tonal abilities had been considered defective, creating a new form of interspecies communication that could transmit complex emotions and abstract concepts across species barriers. A young shifter who had been rejected for only being able to transform into useless forms of aquatic life demonstrated how his abilities could revolutionize underwater mining and research when combined with technology developed by the workshop. But the most impressive demonstration came when all the refugees worked together on a single project. Coordinated by Lyra's ability to interface with multiple systems simultaneously, they constructed and activated a new form of universal translator that didn't just convert words, but actually transmitted the underlying emotional and cultural context of communication. For the first time in galactic history, species that had never been able to truly understand each other were having genuine, nuanced conversations. "This is impossible," declared Ambassador Vex of the Hierarchical Alliance, one of the most powerful political blocs in the galaxy. Such coordination between disparate species should not be achievable. But those same differences, when combined properly, create capabilities that no single species could achieve alone.
The demonstration continued with increasingly impressive displays of collaborative innovation.
The refugees showed how their diverse perspectives could solve problems in resource management, environmental restoration, diplomatic communication, and scientific research. Most remarkably, they demonstrated a prototype for a new form of space travel that combined technologies and techniques from a dozen different species. The result was a propulsion system that was faster, more efficient, and safer than anything currently in use. How long did it take to develop these technologies? Asked Dr. Zara of the Scientific Coalition. Most of these breakthroughs happened in the last 6 months, Lyra replied. When people are free to contribute their unique abilities without fear of rejection, innovation accelerates exponentially. The political implications were staggering. If the Haven Project could achieve such advances with a few hundred refugees, what could be accomplished if every species stopped discarding their defective individuals and started embracing their unique contributions instead? But not all the delegates were impressed. Representative Korax of the Purity Movement spoke with barely controlled anger. "This is exactly why these aberrant individuals must be controlled or eliminated," he declared. "They represent chaos, the breakdown of the natural order that has allowed our species to survive and thrive." "The natural order you're defending," Marcus replied calmly, "is the same one that would have let Lyra die in a recycling container. How much potential has been wasted because species like yours are too afraid of differences to see their value?" Korax's response was cut off by Ambassador Walsh, who had been taking careful notes throughout the presentation. "The legal implications of what we've witnessed today are significant," she announced. "If these individuals can be proven to have been wrongfully exiled or abandoned, their home governments could face charges of crimes against sentience." This statement sent ripples of concern through several delegations. The idea that disposing of undesirable citizens might be considered criminal rather than practical was a paradigm shift that threatened established policies across dozens of worlds. But the most significant moment came when a young delegate from the Emerging Species Council stood to speak. The Emerging Species Council represented civilizations that were just beginning to develop interstellar capabilities. "My people have watched this presentation with great interest," she said. "We are at a crossroads in our development, deciding what kind of civilization we want to become. After seeing this, we know we want to become the kind of people who embrace differences rather than eliminate them." Her statement was echoed by representatives from 6 other emerging civilizations. The Haven Project wasn't just changing how established species viewed diversity, it was influencing the fundamental development of new galactic citizens. As the formal presentation concluded, the delegates broke into smaller groups for individual discussions. Marcus found himself surrounded by representatives wanting to know more about the practical applications of the technologies they had witnessed. But it was the conversation with Subcommander Keth, who had returned as part of the Zephyrian delegation, that proved most significant. "We have been observing your progress," Keth said in his mechanical voice. "The consortium admits we may have been incomplete in our understanding of biological diversity." "Incomplete is one way to put it," Marcus replied dryly. "We wish to propose a formal partnership," Keth continued. "Not to study the refugees as subjects, but to learn from them as equals. The collaborative techniques you have demonstrated could revolutionize how our species approaches problems." Marcus felt Lyra's presence in his mind, her thoughts mixing with his own as they considered the proposal. "What would this partnership involve?" Marcus asked. "Exchange programs, joint research projects, shared technology development," Keth explained. "We would contribute our resources and advanced facilities while learning your methods of inclusive innovation." It was a remarkable offer from a species that had previously seen cooperation as weakness and diversity as chaos. But Marcus knew it was just the beginning of much larger changes. Over the following days, as the various delegations concluded their meetings and prepared to leave, the political landscape of the galaxy began to shift in ways that would be felt for generations. 12 species formally apologized for their treatment of individuals they had exiled or abandoned and requested negotiations to establish repatriation programs for those who wished to return home under new, more inclusive policies. The Galactic Council voted to establish new protections for individuals rejected by their home species, making it illegal to abandon sentient beings without providing alternative support systems. Most importantly, the Council voted to fund the establishment of additional Haven projects throughout the galaxy, creating a network of communities where diversity would be celebrated rather than feared. But perhaps the most significant change was quieter and more personal. Marcus watched as refugees throughout the station received messages from family members they hadn't heard from in years, relatives reaching out to apologize and ask for reconciliation. The revolution isn't just political, Lyra observed as they stood together in the workshop, watching Tor teach a group of visiting young Goliathans how to use his strength for construction, rather than destruction. It's personal, individual, one heart and mind at a time. Marcus nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction as he watched the community they had built continue to grow and thrive. What had started with one human mechanic refusing to let one alien feline die in a recycling container had grown into a movement that was changing the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. "What's next?" Marcus asked, both aloud and through their mental connection. Lyra's response was filled with warmth, hope, and determination. "We keep building bridges one person at a time. We keep showing the galaxy that diversity isn't something to fear, but something to celebrate. And we never, ever give up on anyone who needs help." 6 months later, Marcus received a message that brought tears to his eyes. It was from a Cathara colony ship that had arrived at the edge of Zephyrian space. The message was simple but profound. To Lyra and Marcus of Haven Project. "We are the Cathara who were told we were perfect. We have learned that perfect is not as valuable as diverse. We come seeking not to reclaim our lost member, but to learn from her. We bring others like her that we now realize we misunderstood. Will you teach us how to see strength in difference? Signed, the Cathara Reconciliation Fleet." Marcus showed the message to Lyra, watching as her amber eyes filled with joy and hope. "They're finally learning," she said through their connection. "My people are finally learning." "We all are," Marcus replied, looking out at the bustling community around them. "We're all learning that the things that make us different are the very things that make us strong." As news of the Cathara Reconciliation Fleet spread throughout the station, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that day in the recycling depot. One act of kindness, one refusal to abandon someone in need, had rippled outward to touch countless lives across the galaxy. The revolution wasn't complete. There were still species that clung to old ideas about genetic purity and social conformity. There were still individuals suffering because they were different. But the tide had turned, and the galaxy was slowly but surely learning what humans had always known: that diversity is not a weakness to be eliminated, but a strength to be celebrated. Looking around at the thriving community of the Haven Project, Marcus knew that this was just the beginning. Every refugee who found acceptance, every family that learned to embrace differences, every species that chose inclusion over exclusion was another step toward a galaxy where everyone could find their place. And at the center of it all was the friendship between a human mechanic and an alien feline who had taught each other that sometimes the most important revolutions begin with the simple decision to care about someone who has been forgotten by the rest of the world. The future was bright, diverse, and full of infinite possibilities.